Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are totally breaking down the core principles of palliative care into a super focused study guide. So if you're getting ready for an exam or you just want to really lock in that foundational knowledge, you are in the right place.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basic philosophy of palliative care, and then we'll move right into the practical stuff you'll need, like managing symptoms, handling those tough conversations, and super importantly, making sure you take care of yourself in this field.
First up, let's nail down exactly what palliative care is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. Getting this definition right is a classic exam question, for sure, but really it's the foundation for absolutely everything you'll do in practice.
The name itself really tells you a lot. Palliative comes from a Latin word that means to cloak, which is such a perfect way to describe the goal here, to basically cloak a person in support. This is so much more than just fighting a disease. It's about treating the whole person and their family to really boost their quality of life no matter what's going on.
Okay, let's tackle a huge myth. And I mean, this is one you'll definitely see on an exam, and you'll face it constantly in the real world. It's this idea that palliative care just means giving up.
But the reality? Palliative care is the complete opposite of giving up. It's really all about reframing what hope looks like. Yeah, the focus might shift away from a cure, but it shifts towards a new, really powerful goal, the hope of living every single day with dignity, with comfort, and with as much life as possible.
And here's another really critical myth we've got to bust. This one can cause a ton of fear and can actually stop people from getting care that could really help them.
So here's the truth. Palliative care is all about the quality of the journey, not about how long it is. The entire focus is on managing symptoms and making things more comfortable. And this can start from the very moment of diagnosis, working right alongside any other treatments.
So now that we know what palliative care is, let's take a look at when and how it's actually applied. Because this is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. And knowing the difference between the stages, that's a key competency you're going to be tested on.
A classic exam topic, palliative care versus hospice. So what's the big difference? It really just comes down to timing and intent. Palliative care can start at any stage of an illness, even when someone is getting curative treatments. Hospice, on the other hand, is a very specific type of palliative care, usually for the final months of life, when those curative treatments are no longer the main focus.
It really helps to think of all this as a kind of spectrum. You start out with a really broad, palliative approach. That's a mindset that you can apply to pretty much any serious illness. Then, as a patient's needs get more complex, it narrows down into focused, palliative care. And in those final days or weeks, it becomes this highly specialized, end-of-life care.
And you can see here how that balance of care shifts over time. So early on, the focus is really heavy on trying to modify the disease itself. But as the illness goes on, that focus gradually transitions more towards comfort and quality of life. It's not a switch you flip, right? It's a dynamic, evolving process that adapts to the patient.
Okay, now for the really practical stuff. Think of this section as your toolkit for assessment and management. This is a core nursing skill and a huge part of palliative practice.
Your first tool is the ESSR. You're going to want to get really familiar with this one. It's a standardized way to screen for 9 of the most common symptoms, things like pain, tiredness, nausea, and you have patients rate them on a scale from 0 to 10. It is a fundamental assessment tool. So once you've identified a symptom, you need to dig in and investigate it really thoroughly. The best way to do that? Commit the OQPRST-UV mnemonic to memory. Seriously. It gives you this structured way to make sure you ask all the right questions, from onset all the way down to the patient's values and what their goals are for treatment.
All right, these are the heavy hitters, the symptoms you'll be managing constantly. For your exams, remember these key takeaways. For pain, you need a mix of drug and non-drug approaches. For dyspnea, that's shortness of breath, opioids are actually a first-line treatment. And whatever you do, do not underestimate fatigue. It is often the most debilitating symptom of all.
Okay, let's switch gears from physical symptoms to another core skill, communication. Your ability to navigate those difficult conversations, the ethics, the legal stuff, it is absolutely paramount.
When you have to deliver tough news, the ask, tell, ask model is your best friend. First, you ask what they already know so you can meet them where they are. Then, you tell them the new information, really clearly and without a bunch of jargon. And finally, and this is probably the most important step, you ask again to check what they understood. This makes sure you're on the same page, and it opens the door for you to address how they're feeling about it all.
Now for a critical legal and ethical point that you absolutely 100% must know. For consent to be considered informed and legally valid, all 5 of these elements have to be clearly explained and understood by the patient or whoever is making decisions for them. No skipping steps.
So what happens when a patient can't consent for themselves anymore? Well, you can't just ask anybody. Every jurisdiction has a legal hierarchy for who becomes the substitute decision maker. So, for example, in Ontario, it typically starts with a spouse or partner, and then it moves down a legally defined list. You have to know the order for wherever you practice. This is not something you can guess on.
Okay, and finally, let's turn to the most human part of all of this work. Because palliative care isn't just about techniques and laws, it's about caring for diverse patients, their families, and, just as importantly, caring for yourself. Care is never, ever one-size-fits-all. You have to practice what we call intersectional care, which means recognizing the unique histories, the barriers, and the needs of every single patient. That might mean accommodating a smudging ceremony, understanding a chosen family, or tackling complex social needs. Your care has to be individualized.
And this brings us to why self-care isn't a luxury, it is a professional necessity. You can draw a direct line from the day-to-day realities of this work, like being constantly exposed to suffering, to some really serious consequences, like burnout and moral distress. For your own survival in this field, learning to recognize those signs in yourself is the absolute critical first step.
So this means we have to think about self-care in a different way. It isn't just about bubble baths and taking a day off after a hard shift, right? It's an active professional skill set. It's the daily practice of self-reflection, of setting boundaries, and of processing your own grief. This is a skill you have to intentionally build throughout your entire career.
So we'll end with this question, and it's not just a summary, it's really a point of reflection for you. As you're taking in all this information for your exams and for your career, just take a moment to think about your own resilience and what's going to sustain you in this incredibly challenging but also profoundly vital work.